Hi, Richard here from Sonic Violins, and I'd like to introduce you to my Octave instruments, which are the subsonic Octave Violin that I've just been playing, and the Chinello Octave Viola, which we'll look at in a minute. These are electro-acoustic instruments, so the sound you've just heard is recorded straight from the instrument. The pickup system comprises of two transducers mounted in the bridge, one over each foot. They connect to an internal high impedance matched preamp, which is powered by a standard 9-volt PP3 battery that I mount under the chin rest. There are more details about that system on the introduction video on my website. The instrument itself is the same as the Sonic Attack range. Again, you'll find more information there on the website. And it is a good student instrument, and this is built from a 14.5-inch viola, so just ½ inch, 13 millimeters longer than most standard violins, so it's very comfortable for violinists to play. The deeper ribs on the viola obviously increase the cavity size, which very much helps with the reproduction of the lower frequencies, which is the reason obviously for using the viola body. The strings, probably the most important feature of the instrument, I buy direct from Super Sensitive in the States. These are their Sensical range, which are pearl-on metal wound strings, and they make them for these instruments, which are violin size octave violins and violas. They also make strings for violas as well, octave violas in viola length, including a high E string as well, which I use on my 5-string violins. They even make octave strings for cellos, which I build as octave cellos and double bass, if there are any cellists out there watching. So the strings themselves don't put any more tension on the instrument, so the tension is the same as violin strings, so there's no worry if you fit these to your instrument about what may happen to the instrument. The length is the same as we've said, so the only difference is the mass. That's the three things: length, tension and mass that affect the frequency. So they are very thick when you see them. They are actually the same sort of thickness as cello strings. So as I said, this is an electro-acoustic instrument. You've heard it plugged in. I'm going to play it again now, some simple scales. I have two microphones set up here in stereo. So I will rerun the video once with it plugged in and once with it recorded from the microphone, so you can hear the capability of the instrument both ways round. So as you can imagine, this is a very versatile instrument. It can be used in a number of ways, so I'll give a few examples with a violin recorded over the top. So firstly, most obviously, you could just play as you would on the violin and sit an octave down in that new space below, like this. The strings themselves, being heavier, are slower to respond than a violin. The instrument comes with a viola bow, which you may prefer to use to your standard violin bow. If you have a carbon bow, then you can crank the tension up a bit, that helps. If you're looking at the Chinello, which we'll look at in a minute, some people even use a cello bow. Another obvious example is to use the instrument as a cello would be used, perhaps playing chords as well. Chords sound particularly nice, so something like this. And bearing chords in mind, if you're a fiddle singer, which I'm not, so I can't demonstrate the singing thing, obviously those chords and simple riffs can be used underneath the voice. the idea. If you currently use effects with your violin, then you might be using an octaver. Obviously this negates the need to do that, and in fact an octaved signal can sound quite processed on a violin, whereas here you get a lot of detail in the sound, which I'll demonstrate with the harmonics up by the bridge and get the idea of some of the sounds slightly weird that can be produced, even including at the end a little sort of what I like to call a didgeridoo sound. So something along these lines. So there you go. Very versatile instrument. We'll now take a look at the Octave Viola very quickly, the Chinello. So that's the Chinello. It's quite an amazing instrument and it rattles your head. These things connect to your body far more than a violin, so be prepared to lose a few fillings if you're going to play one of these. The low C string is the thing I want to talk about, and I'll replay that scale now with the recording from the microphone and you'll see what I mean. So you can hear that the C string is actually struggling a little bit to be heard acoustically. It's quite difficult to dig into that string. I'm using a cello bow now, but the amplified sound is still really powerful. So if you're thinking of using a Chinello as an acoustic instrument, you have to consider a larger body. The 14.5 inch is fine if you're plugged in, and it's fine for violin players. If you can play a bigger instrument, or if you're a viola player, then the bigger the body, the better. Here's an example that I recorded when I had a 16-inch Chinello in the workshop, just to give you a comparison of that C string between a 14.5 inch and a 16-inch instrument. So there we are, that's the Octave violins that put you in another space within your music. If you want any more information, this video is actually part of a blog if you've not seen that. There's a lot of content there to read through. Also, the instrument descriptions on the website have more information. If you've got any specific questions, you can email me either through the blog or directly on the website. Thanks for listening.